get the intros and formalities out of the way. So, a woman in leadership and digital transformation expert, Stacey consults through her company Epic Transformation. She's a published author and a public speaker who most recently published her personal photo memoir, A 5-Year Love Affair, and a deck of daily inspiration cards to support mental wellness in adults and children. She's an angel investor and a Caribbean tech sector leader with global leadership experience in public, private, and non-profit sectors. Her commitment to women in leadership and in the technology industry is evidenced in her being appointed as the first Jamaican IT Fellow by the Chartered Institute of IT Professionals of the UK. She is notably the second female president of the Jamaican Computer Society in its 47-year history and was listed among the top 50 Caribbean women in tech in 2021. Welcome, Stacey Hines.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Yes, thank you for joining us, Stacey. We wanted to invite you to be our first guest on our wind down sessions with Elle, and even more so as we are getting ready to prepare for International Women's Day this year, that is focusing on digital and you know the gender gap in the digital space.
Yeah.
But thank you for joining us. And as this is a wind down, we're gonna start with some wine.
Yes,
Bring
on the wine.
Little reds today.
The 19 crimes. I'm a
19
fan.
Awesome. Okay.
Awesome. So with that, we're going to kick off with our first question as the wine is pouring. So what has your experience been like in the technology industry?
Oh, wow. That's a wide question. Thank you so much. Well, let's just say that my experience in tech started very early on. When I was 9, I like to say I entered the tech industry when I was 9 years old. A huge part of what made tech a part of my life was my dad. So my father has always been in tech, and so when I was 9 years old, he started to take me to his office. So he worked nights sometimes on Wall Street as a systems operator, which is downstairs. Usually, you have these huge skyscrapers, and then you have the bottom floor that has all these huge machines, right? So I used to go downstairs with him at nighttime, freezing cold rooms, right? Because the systems operator. But back then, that was the cool tech job, right? As you can imagine. And for me, it was pretty cool because you would just be sitting there with all these amazing things. I don't even think I knew that they were called computers back then. Now that I'm thinking about it. But it was always a lot of fun to go to work with Daddy, and to see him typing at the time. It would look like green screen, so it's just black background with green type. So I have been, I suppose, in the tech space before I even understood the magnitude of what it was about to become. And since then, it just was a part of my life. So I've always used computers ever since I was in high school. We used to have a room in the house in the States called the computer room. So, not like how you have a library. We didn't have a library. We had a computer room. And in the computer room, you had different types of computers, maybe 2 or 3. And he was always working or doing something on one. And there was not much else in there, a sofa and a desk and his chair. And it would always be where you could find him. At the time, I don't think we had laptops. At least I didn't own a laptop, but he may have had for work a very large, look like a piece of luggage type of thing.
Yes.
And so it became just something that I was naturally curious about and very comfortable with. And so we, being myself and my dad, started the journey of my degree in computer information systems. And from there, I think it just kind of ballooned or mushroomed into trying different aspects of technology. So I wasn't the girl that fell in love with coding and was really great at coding. I sucked at coding. And even though my first job out of university was actually with ADT Security Systems as a C# developer, I think 3 months in, I was like, I can't do this. So, so I left and I went and started doing work with training Microsoft. So I feel like I'm aging myself, Lord.
No.
No. Which is good because I look great, right?
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers to
Cheers
that.
to that.
So I left coding and went straight into training. And we were training on, that's when Microsoft Office was really taking off. So Windows 95 and Microsoft Word and PowerPoint and Excel and the whole Office suite. And they were doing the Microsoft certifications and that stuff. So I actually went into that role, and I really think I found an area of passion. I just really loved teaching. And I ended up, I think, maybe even finding maybe a zone of genius kind of spot within technology, because it was all about transformation, helping people to move from where they were to where they wanted to be.
Right.
A lot of companies at the time were moving their organizations towards Windows. And so it was what I considered digital transformation in the early days. Now we're talking about it again, but
Yeah,
it was
much more
quite
holistic.
yeah, it's a bigger change now. But then, you know, lots of companies, I did conferences, like big companies like Marriott would like fly us in to come and train like 400 people at a time on how to use Windows 95 and just the whole.
That's so interesting. It's because you're right. Like then that was a digital transformation, and yet we're still going through this digital transformation on a very different, level and scale of back. I won't say back then, like it was. To now.
Yeah.
But I mean, what is it do you think that you love most about the digital arena, and that has kept you connected for so long?
Yeah, I think because it's so multifaceted. Because I went from coding that I didn't love into training, and then I left from training into instructional design, which is really, I would learn the system and then I would actually create manuals and different types of training products for other people. And that required me to test the software, and so then I got into testing software. And then, so I was literally touching all the different aspects to that I suppose you interact with technology in a business sense. And at the same time, I think tools like your BlackBerry and your iPhone and all those things are now becoming, cell phones are now becoming a lot more prevalent in society, a lot more accessible by the everyday person, not just for business people. And I think just being able to understand what was behind the tech and just see the possibility of what you can create with it, and then being able to touch it in so many different ways, to the point where I was eventually VP of product management for creating a software solution. And when you start to now become more strategic about how technology is going to actually benefit not just one person, but provide solution for hundreds of thousands of people, it just takes on a different meaning.
Right.
And it feels a lot more fulfilling. And I think that's what I respect about it. I think that it's the one industry that continues to evolve exponentially in the way that it allows us to express ourselves fully as human beings,
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So tell me, so not everybody had a daddy who was very much involved in tech, right?
Yeah.
But with that said, there is definitely an underrepresentation of women in tech, which is very saddening to us. But how do you think that we could strive for digital equality and pay equity?
Well, that's good. That's a good question. So one of the things that I've been exploring as I expand how I focus my energy and effort towards transformation is in the space of women. And I was really excited to see the topic or the theme of DigitALL, innovation and technology for gender equality, as the theme for this year. It's very exciting. And the lens through which I like to look at the possibilities that exist is not so much on the what we don't have. Because I think you hear so much about the problem and the inequity,
Right.
and the less, what we don't have, right? I really like to look at, well, what have we actually achieved so far, and what can we do to create more of that, working directly with the woman. Because I think there's a lot of focus on what the companies should be doing, what the government should be doing, And I still think that there's a lot of work that women can be doing as well. I think part of it is, not a lot of us had dads that were techies.
Right.
And so what happens is we have somewhat of an intrinsic fear or a lack of confidence around technology in general. The ability or the capabilities that it affords us. And even in instances where, let's say you're inside of an organization and you have somebody that may be in the marketing department or in the human resources or the legal department, and they'll refer to, a woman will refer to the tech people and the tech stuff
Right.
as something external,
Right.
as opposed to being open and curious about, well, what does that mean? I don't understand that. Can you explain it to me? Asking the question, probing more. In terms of the equity piece, I think it also has to do with us being more bold and standing in our power and really owning the presence that we have available to us. I don't want us to feel as though we have to be given permission to be in the space.
Absolutely.
Because if we still want permission to be in spaces that we're comfortable. So imagine now, if you're wanting or even curious about a space that you're not comfortable in, you're going to want double the permission,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I mean, we were having a conversation today actually about that, why is it that women particularly, and is it even, more so for Black women, but why is it that women feel that they have to conform or they have to be small, they must dumb themselves down in order to fit into the corporate space and, to even at times, gain the respect of, counterparts, etc. Is it, and she was saying, how? And we said, no, I don't think it's necessary that you have to do that. You just have to find it. You should remain bold in standing in terms of who you are, authentically who you are, and find a space within which you can do that.
Yeah, you can express that. I mean, and to that point, what I'll also say is I'm by no means saying that it's an equal playing field, because it absolutely is not, right? Having been in tech for as long as I have, I don't even think I realized initially the disparity, right? Now I think there's a lot of conversation about it, and I think I'm a lot more present than I was when I was, probably in my late 20s, early 30s. I think I wasn't as present or as aware, and that awareness now, in particular through the internet, I think social media and other forms of content marketing has really brought to the fore some of the challenges that women are experiencing. So it's not to say that there isn't some disparity, and you also have a lot of males who are not necessarily trying to open the door for you, who want to tell you that you are not good enough to have a seat at the table. And so it's really important for us to be able to stand in that power, and many women don't know how to do that. They're not sure. It's not something you go to school and they teach you how to stand in your power.
Right, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Not at all.
Well, I mean, with that said, are there any companies or programs or initiatives that you know of that you can speak to that you feel really are making a conscious and active effort to really break this gender divide?
Oh yeah, lots of companies I think are doing so. Some are doing it for the regulatory reasons or the marketing reasons. And then you have companies like Chief, and Chief, which is a membership company. They're a membership community for women. They're actively seeking to have more women at the top, so to speak. And then you have McKinsey in particular has partnered with Lean In, which came through Sheryl Sandberg, to actually do more work around bringing the statistics and the data around gender equity and equality to the forefront. So I do think that there are companies that are actively in the work of creating visibility, being the change they want to see. Deloitte is another company as well that I've seen a lot of white papers come with research around the gender equity space. And there's quite a few others. LinkedIn Also, because
I
I
have
did,
noticed that.
yeah, I actually spoke at one of their conferences, Transform Her, a couple years ago, and that's where they're very focused on the voice of the woman and creating that space, that safe space for the conversations, etc. So I see it more so in companies in the US and to some extent Canada. I think that in the UK, the BCS, or the Chartered Institute of IT Professionals, which is where I got my fellowship, I think they also have a very active space that discusses women in tech in particular. And they recently published a paper in collaboration with one of their members. She actually runs, her name is Charlene, she's of Jamaican heritage actually, even though she lives in the UK. She actually runs a company that teaches women how to code and provides them with opportunity and access to work. And they recently produced a paper on gender equality, specifically in the tech space, and in particular for women of color, because you know that over in the UK they have a lot of the different bias challenges that they're dealing with now.
Absolutely.
So I would say that there are a lot of companies that are larger companies that are leading the charge, and in some instances smaller, more niche companies that are looking to create some kind of transformation through their own way. And I think that's what I would also say, is that that's really a huge part of what my focus is in my company, is to create a safe space for women to work on the skills that they don't teach you in business school, to help you to step into that presence and resilience and power dynamic that's required. Because you're not gonna just roll over and be equal.
Absolutely.
It doesn't happen like that, right?
Unfortunately.
Yeah, so.
So that kind of leads me to my next question. So for those companies who have yet to kind of follow the way of the Deloitte and the LinkedIn that have seemingly started to pave that journey, you know, what could other companies do to kind of encourage more women and girls to feel empowered to venture into tech?
Yeah, well, I think there's definitely an opportunity to create conversation space. I think a large part of what helps to engender change is actually just having conversations. One of the things that I would say we don't do as well as we could here in the Caribbean, in Jamaica, is actually create conversations. I don't see anybody in Jamaica talking about equity for women. And I think it's a big gap, because there are a lot of women who are empowered in managerial roles, and they see them, you know, some in the C-suite. And you have a lot of girls in school that are doing very well. However, the majority of them do not know what their pay rate is as compared to a man, even as compared to other females. They might even know what the industry rate is, right? What the industry can bear.
Yeah.
One of the things that we do in the Femme Powered program is I actually collect a lot of data, because we're also very data starved in the region. And when you ask about pay equity, they have absolutely, they don't know, right? When you ask about belonging and inclusion, they'll think the company may have something because they have staff parties or, you know, but there aren't conversations with women about mansplaining, like when you're in a board meeting and the man feels you say something and the man feels he has to explain what you're saying, even though you've articulated it perfectly well.
Right.
Or you're speaking and the male feels he needs to speak above you or over you, or tell you that your opinion is not valued. Nobody's talking about the fact that that is happening and that it is not appreciated, it is not okay, and that we need to do something about it. But then we also have lots of other instances where we see that women are not treated well. And we have the second highest rate for violence or murder or whatever the statistic is. And we kind of just move along. So this is also where it comes to the standing in your power. It doesn't have to mean like we strike and we parade down the middle of halfway tree topless, like, you know, how the other protesters do, you know, woman power. It doesn't have to be that. But I do think we need to have the conversations. And sometimes you have to start in a safe space which is what I'm hoping that we can create with them, and with conversations like this, and then ultimately be the change that we want to see. Because a lot of women are the lawmakers and the policy holders and all things, right? So we need to just take charge and do what we need to do.
Precisely.
So tell us a little bit more about FEM. You've been mentioning FEM, and I think, you know, in the introduction we spoke about, you know, your background in tech, and you know, a lot of people know what you've been doing in terms of holistic health, but talk about what you're just doing right now.
Okay, so I'm excited about them. That's why I'm like,
And you put the wine glass down.
She's serious.
So Femme Powered is what I would consider our signature program for women in leadership. And that's really every woman. So I consider every woman a leader of their own life. And this program is intended to create a safe space for us to learn how to own our power, exude executive presence, and build mental resilience so that we can create success without stress.
Without stress?
Yes.
Okay.
I think you just got 2 new sign.
I saw that as well. Yeah, and the truth is that we have been trained into a system that's a very masculine energy system. And it's okay, it's worked, you have had lots of great success in that system. And I don't even think we recognize that the evolution of what happened with wars and so forth and the factory workers, etc., that's actually what created that system, right? And because there has never really been much attention to the system that we work in, we now have women that have very different brains and bodies than men do, that are essentially, you know, like a square peg forced into a round hole to work in this particular way that ultimately does not serve us in the long term. And so what I envision through this program is a way to teach us how to navigate the existing system and to create systems of our own that will help us to work in a way that serves us, builds us up, allows us to mother and to come to the end of mothering and manage things like menopause and changes to our bodies, even manage things like periods. Like, I mean, I don't think anybody ever talks about the fact that you could literally be having a crippling period experience where you'd really much rather be curled up in the bed because you can barely move, your uterus is literally crawling outside of you, and you have to be inside of a board meeting doing a presentation because this is the world we live in.
Right.
Nobody talks about that.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
And so the idea is, you know, let's create a space where we can discuss those things and we can talk about strategies to help with navigating that. Let's create a space where we can talk about what success looks like for you and how you can support yourself through the imposter syndrome that we deal with very differently than how men deal with it. It's not that they don't have the thoughts. It's just that those thoughts dropped into a guy's head doesn't necessarily prevent him from moving forward. You know, he might push forward and move through, whereas in our head, it's ping-ponging around with all the other thoughts and reasons why we shouldn't and we can't, and then all the kids and or the spouse or all the different things that we tend to process at the same time. You know, so FEM is supposed to create a holistic space that supports and also uplifts, but at the same time gives you practical tools so you understand what it means to be in a boardroom and to operate in that space. You understand what it means to run your own business and how to manage team members and employees and how to manage yourself while you're going through all of that.
Yeah. No, that's incredible, because yeah, you're right, that the resources are not there. And it's in terms of it empowering women, whichever level they're at, to be able to make those decisions. I mean, later on I have 100% experience in this, you know, 3 years almost into this entrepreneurial journey.
3 years already?
Can you imagine?
Almost 3 years.
Wow.
Almost 3 years in this entrepreneurial journey, and we are still learning, we are still
We will
growing
continue to learn.
in the space and learning about how to maneuver within the space. So, you know, and I know we're not alone.
Not at all.
At all.
Not at all. And I'm going to completely deviate from the question for just a second, because I think that what you're doing is just amazing. Because I mean, the one thing that I continue to speak to women about in really any industry or sector is the fact that majority of women that we know suffer with imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And speaking your truth in a very assertive way and not kind of speaking in this almost subservient way.
Yes.
You know,
Apologetic.
Apologetic. You know, do you mind if we could get this email at this time? No, I need the email at this time because if it was a male counterpart, they wouldn't even think twice.
Yeah, yeah.
So I love the fact that you're going to be kind of moving forward in this direction and that it's going to be so empowering.
I'm excited. And I'll tell you a little secret about it too. I actually had this idea in 2018.
Okay.
And it was the same things that I had to tool up around in order to now launch this properly in 2023. That I'm bringing to the fore, the same imposter syndrome, the same comparative syndrome, the same self-doubt, apologizing for my greatness, which I'm so overdoing that now, right?
Cheers.
No more apology.
No more apology.
No apology.
Yeah.
I love it.
But it actually took me going through the suffering of it in order to birth it. And my podcast is probably the only piece of the puzzle that a podcast is probably the only piece of the puzzle that I have stuck with in having the conversation. It's been a lot of therapy for me, just talking through a lot of the things that I know and I've been taught and I've been certified in and I've been coached through and all the things. And recognizing that, my God, there's so many women that could benefit from this. Why are you holding yourself back from supporting the purpose that you've been placed here to serve?
And everything in its time.
You know,
everything
yes.
aligns as is intended.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
When back in 2019, I did have no agency, but I had a little group around me that helped me work on like events and stuff
Creatives.
with like social media things.
Yeah.
So they were awesome, a group of young creatives, and they're like, listen, you need to create a little agency. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm
Yeah.
not doing it. So then they even created a logo for me, right?
Oh, it was a gift for
Yeah.
her birthday, for
So
her
it
40th
was
birthday.
the law agency, so law are my initials, okay? And they're like, yeah, this is what you need to do, and it was called law agency, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh my God, I don't know about this at all, I don't know. So then we had worked together, and I don't even know how it came to me or why I thought about, partnering
Brett.
Yeah.
with Elena.
So it was Brett. Brett said something to you and was like, this is what you should do. And that's when you called.
Well, here's the thing. So when, at that point, it was still the law agency, so LAW, right? So I said to Brett one day, I was like, wait a second. Law could also stand for Lynch and Long,
Oh.
right? So I'm like,
Before she can tell him about any of this.
Oh, so you don't
this
have
is
a plan
this
last
is a
time.
line. It's a line, it's meant to be, da 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 da.
Yeah.
So I went to Elena, I'm like, let's do this. And then, so we were the law agency for a little bit at the beginning. And we were kind of trying to create a logo, and we're like, something's just not right, something's not sitting right, something is just not aligning here. And then we were like, Lynch and Wong are not our names. They're our husband's names.
Oh.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, can we say that? Yes.
No, that's not who we are.
See, this is the good stuff. This is the good stuff. Okay.
We are Elena and Lisha,
Yeah.
right? And so that's how Elle was born.
Oh, I
Right?
love that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So, but
There's a
it-
next
but it was-
chapter.
Yeah, but what was the next chapter?
The next chapter is foundation.
Oh.
So we're very big
yes.
on being a participant within our community, right?
Yeah.
And with that comes a sense of really being involved and showing up. My mom growing up was very big on you show up for people, for things that matter. You show up for people that matter. You show up. Anyway, so COVID hit, and we had literally started 2 weeks before.
Yeah.
And we're like, what the hell do we do now? Like we started this storytelling agency, right? Whose story will I tell?
Oh.
And as an event, we were trying to do mostly events. But
Yeah.
Most events. And then we realized, okay, well, why don't we help some of the clients that we would have taken on, or at the time, our only client who came to us and were like, listen, we're signing with you. Help them kind of hit that kind of corporate give back, right? Go to social responsibility and help them be present at the beginning, at the height of COVID in a really meaningful way. So we reached out to our friends over at Maxwell Children's Home and said, what do you really need? And so with that, at the end of that project, both of us kind of was like, God, it just felt so
So good.
We need to do more of this. How can we do more of this and still focus on the 9 to 5? And realized, we need a foundation. I had just finished a project with Ray and Evie when I was working with a foundation, and I loved it. I said, I really want to find a way to incorporate some sort of foundation element, it's just to run. And we realized all of our children's names spell an acronym, and the word is bliss.
Oh, that is so
In
nice.
terms of like, if you put it in terms of age.
Yeah,
So we have
chronologically.
Bella, Layla, Isla, Saya. So BBLIS, which spells bliss. And, especially with Layla's blissful mommy background,
Yes,
Pinterest, and Disney, more alignment.
Oh, I love alignment. It's the greatest thing, and the truth is that we're always the ones that are in our way. That's it, that everything is already aligned. We just have to move out of the way to let it happen. And that's I think the hardest lesson for women to learn, because we like to control everything.
Everything.
And so, if you're controlling all the things, then you're not allowing alignment to happen. Right? And the reason we feel the need to control is because of the same thing. You feel you need to ask for permission. And where you take control of things, you now feel you have to hold on to that, because if you don't hold on to that, then things are going to fall apart.
Well, that's what we were kind of raised with, right?
Yes.
You let go of the reins.
Yes.
Sometimes they do fall apart.
And what?
We have to pick them
My
up.
entire life fell apart. My entire construct of what I thought was supposed to be life fell apart completely. I had my big job, right? I was the breadwinner, okay? And I was slender and doing all the things, and I dress nice, and I come from foreign, and like all the things, right? And I had 3 children, and that I loved to pieces, and I was literally just like so unhappy and just feeling like I was wandering, not really serving any purpose. I don't even think I talked about purpose back then, right? And it just little pieces by pieces, like I think I kept going. It's like it just like, yeah, I'm gonna make it work, 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 until it just can't. You get hit by a Mack truck and it just doesn't work anymore beyond that. And at this point, it's not you allowing, it's just life making you allow.
Yeah.
And what that taught me was that things fall apart and you put other things back together, and then those things fall apart. And it's just, that's what life is. That's actually the gift of life. The gift of life is that we are constantly evolving to the next best version of ourselves. And there is nothing more beautiful than accepting that evolution.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so with that evolution,
We have questions.
we have questions. It's good stuff.
All right, so what has your experience been like in the technology industry? I mean, I know we've spoken generally about it, but after, you spoke about a little bit of the coding and then the training, how did you go from there to kind of where you are now? What has that journey looked like for you?
Well, I never looked at my career as a ladder to climb. And I think that made somewhat of a difference. And it was actually out of naivete, not because I knew that the ladder existed and I was avoiding climbing it. That's not what happened. It was just not something that was in my frame of reference. And possibly because of my Jamaican parenting, I don't think it's something that we really grow up hearing about. It's more, I think, European and North American in nature, where there is this climb this ladder. This is the next thing on the career rung, and right. And so what that did was I think it actually created a lot of allowance in my career space. And so so I used to do quality assurance work, which is testing software for the division of Macy's that was the tech division. So most of these very large department stores and retail entities, they actually have a division that's just technology.
Really?
Yeah, it was great when because I kept trying to figure out, how do I work for these companies? Like, how do I get in there so I can get a discount?
Absolutely. All about a discount.
And then I was actually working for it's a health insurance company in the States called Humana, and I was working at Humana on this tech project. And one of the consultants that I was working with, he was talking about a gig that he was just consulting on for Macy's. And I was like, it's this guy that was in the army and he's really into coding. And I was like, well, you were working for Macy's? And he's like, yeah, they have a tech division. And I was like, oh, hold up, sign me up. Shopping tech, whatever. So then I went to work with Macy's for a little while, and while I was there, I really started doing a lot of traveling because I was in the division that was responsible for rolling out new systems. And so when they made the shoe scanners, I don't know if you guys know when they made the shoe scanners, I was on that project. Okay.
The shoes, wait, on the shoe scanners.
Yes, where they could bring out the little scanners to the shoe floor, and you just scan it and get the price.
And just see
They have this size. Yes, I was on that project. Yeah. So anyway, so I was doing that work, and it kind of took me back into doing both sides. I was doing both the behind the scenes development support, like I was doing business analysis, requirement and all that. And then I was going and training the staff. So I would fly to like 34th Street Macy's and spend like a couple weeks there. If you read my book, that's actually when I wrote about having to FedEx my breast milk.
Oh yeah.
Because I was nursing Victoria at the time. She was like 6 months old, and I was determined to not have her have any formula, and so I traveled with my pump. And I remember being in that hotel. The hotel room was little, like yay big, right? I'm pumping my breast milk, and my mom's friend hooked me up with somebody at FedEx. So I would call the downstairs and be like, "Do you have a freezer I could put my breast milk in?" And
oh my goodness.
would go to FedEx and FedEx my breast milk back to Atlanta, where I was living. It was crazy.
Did it work?
It did work.
We go
It
to
did
our
work.
children.
It did work. I was late for a couple of meetings, but that's okay. She got the breast milk. But yeah, so I did that work, which was really great fun for me because I love to travel, and of course I love speaking. So the training kind of broke up what I consider the monotonous part of the tech, being behind the scenes and doing that. And then that really helped me to understand where I excelled in technology, and I wanted to spend more time leading teams, and so I was offered an opportunity to come to Jamaica to work with a startup company here. They were actually looking to be acquired, and since the systems and processes that clearly I would have learned and mastered in the US would have benefited a Jamaican company. So I came and did that for a year, and then they got acquired within that year. And a part of the deal was that I had to move to Canada with the team. So I was here for and then moved to Canada. In the midst of that was all of the life collapse, the breast cancer, the separation, all of the different bits and pieces of things in the midst of moving to Canada. But one of the things about tech that I've always appreciated is that I could work from anywhere. So before this whole remote work excitement was happening, in 2010, I was after my radiation therapy, I would come back to the house because you're really tired usually after radiation, and I would be doing interviews to hire for my team that I was building in Canada. And I'd be sitting there on my laptop, and I'd be having my meetings and doing my interviews and all of that stuff virtually. But yeah, and then that bit of my career was really where I stepped into owning my power, because I think I got the opportunity to lead large groups of people and release things and be responsible for markets. So I had responsibility for partnerships that were in Australia and India and Africa, and it was a really cool gig. Like, I mean, just a very, very cool, yeah, very cool opportunity. However, what I will say though is that during that time is when I started to actually experience the gender divide, not just with the salary piece, but also with how I was related to by male counterparts who may not have ever seen, because we were in Canada now, who may not have ever seen a black VP,
Right.
female,
Yeah, exactly.
sitting at the table, and having it. I think most of it really is unconscious bias, as opposed to a conscious, I am not trying to make this work for you,
Right.
you know?
It's unconscious.
But I started to experience some of it, and for me, I think I was so excited and passionate about the work I was doing. Like, I'm not even paying attention to you.
Yeah.
Like, it's not about you, it's about me, and it's about the work I'm doing. Where I was struggling though was in the family part, because I was now separated, so I was raising 3 kids on my own, and managing, you know, a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 11-year-old, or how was it, 2, 6, something like that. They were small. Just managing that and the travel and all of that. So it was very much, and the cancer, and you know, so work in that instance really became sort of a solace for me.
Right.
And I think I became very insular in that period because I just found a safe space in tech. It was like, yeah, this is my comfort zone, and I can build and I can create and I can control in this space, you know? And then I think what ended up happening after that is just an appreciation for myself and work, and recognizing the access that I had based on the level that I was at, and wanting more of that. And so then it was, okay, well, how do we create better balance? And that's how I ended up back in Jamaica.
Okay.
So
And how long have you been back in Jamaica for?
it's been 9.5 years.
Okay.
It actually, yeah, it's long. It feels long. Like it feels very long, right?
Yeah.
So it's been 9.5 years since I've been back here, and actually the job that I took was also in the C-suite, working with an investment company here, and that role is what I think created a pivot for me to broaden my spectrum. So when although I was in tech with the company that I was working with in Canada when we got acquired, I did quite a bit of work around product marketing, because I was responsible for launches and bringing the product to the customer, figuring out what customers wanted, etc. But I had never really just spent all my time in marketing, or all my time in human resources and leadership and focusing on that. And so when I moved to Jamaica, I was now in a head of group strategic planning, and it was a great opportunity because I now created centers of excellence for all of these things, and I was responsible for all of that. So I built a digital marketing agency inside of the group, which was very cool to do, right?
Really?
And yes, it was really cool to do. And then in human resources, created a people and culture center of excellence where we brought in leadership training. And then of course I had the technology center of excellence, and then the finance center of excellence, which I had a very light touch on, because finance is not my zone of genius. Okay, it's okay.
And it's good to recognize that.
It's good to recognize that and be okay with it.
Yeah.
And then through the use of technology, so technology was a huge lever for me. Technology was a huge lever for me in being able to amplify, accelerate, and deliver on the work that was being done in all these different areas. So whenever I thought human resources, I always thought, how does technology better us in this space? How do we enable our company to serve our people better through the use of technology? And of course, digital marketing was just, that was just all things tech and all things digital, and the creator economy was birthing, and you know, I found HubSpot and inbound marketing, and it just, you know, just flourished there, and so that's, and then I think through that work, one of the things that was a requirement at ICD, I remember when the president of the company, Peter Melhado, sat me down, like literally my first month, and he was like, "You are required to serve." And I was like, serve what? Copy? Like, what is required to serve? And he explained that one of the core principles or the ethos of the group, which comprised of Joe Mathlon and that family, was really around giving back to the country and nation building. It was a huge tenet for ICD, and of course, now here I am in this executive team, and I was like, okay, well, I've never done this part, so this was new and interesting, and how can I serve? And of course, my zone of excellence is in tech, so I was like, well, okay. He was like, well, I have an idea, and it was to be a part of eGov, which is the ministerial agency responsible for technology for the country. Their board needed somebody to sit in the strategy space, and so I joined the board of eGov and led their strategic planning subcommittee. And it was a way to now connect me with public service, which was that's where Jamaican Computer Society came. It just really mushroomed into this great avenue of service for me, which continues. It continues to this day, and that all came through technology.
Right. Yeah. Fill the bucket you didn't even know was there.
Yeah, for sure. Very, very exciting.
And very inspirational.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely.
Inspirational.
But what's next for Stacey?
Oh gosh, after I take this sip of wine, let's see.
Yes, I was just and the journey and how you got here, but what's next for you?
You touched on FEM, but where's FEM really going?
That's a really good question, and you guys are getting the tea because I haven't actually talked about them like this before today, so I'm happy about that. I actually, for myself, when I see myself maybe 10 years from now, it's a lot more speaking and books and mentorship of women, female entrepreneurs, a lot more investing wealth that I have built exponentially into other women who are coming up and want to create transformation in life. So that's the long term. What I would like for FEM to become and what I'm creating is not just a community, but ultimately I'd really like it to be a digital platform that allows women to be able to combine their desire for productivity, performance, and impact with keeping themselves blissful and having joy. So it's finding a way to marry those two on an app or on a platform that they use, or something that looks like a sustainable way of maintaining your sanity and peak performance levels.
Right.
I have no idea how I'm going to do it.
I was gonna say that's pretty incredible, because I think ultimately that's what we all strive for. Right? When people like to talk and say there is no concept of balance, that concept of balance doesn't exist, and whether it does or not is not the question. Right? It's just whether you are in a space that you feel some kind of holistic peace and calm. Whether it's being, a businesswoman or being a mother or whatever it is,
in between.
and everything in between.
Yes.
Exactly.
So FEM is starting as a community that expresses itself through coaching and through retreats and events. Like I do workshops. I'm planning a conference. I may need a conference planning partner, just saying. So that's currently how it expresses itself. But for me, one of the big wins that I'm looking for is just getting the insight and the data, because I think one of the problems that we are experiencing, why we can't find this magic pill of that blend, is because we just don't have enough data that is expressing what women want. Right? So we know what we don't want. We talk about it all the time. We complain about all the things that are wrong. Let's talk about what it would look like if I could have it my way, if I could experience this bliss while I'm building an amazing career and taking care of my children and my love partner in a way that makes us all have happier moments most of the time. Because you're going to have the drama. But, happier moments most of the time. Yeah, so that's the dream in a nutshell.
Plus a nap at 3 o'clock.
Plus a nap. As often as possible. Yeah, so.
Oh my gosh.
Stacey, it's been an honor to spend this time with you. for our inaugural session. We weren't really sure what kind of form this was going to take, or how it would come together. But I think, as you've been saying, everything just kind of aligns and is intended when it's supposed to, as it's intended. So, thank you for joining us.
No, I'm happy to have been
Thank you for
here.
taking the time.
Thank
Yes.
you for taking
Post
the
now.
time.
Cheers, cheers.
Cheers.
Yes.
And cheers to them.
Oh, cheers to
Cheers to them. And
Cheers.
Elle and all of the
And
alignments that will come
yes,
from that.
I think so. There's going to
Yeah.
be, I think, some incredible work that we can do together.
Oh,
Indeed.
For
Indeed.
sure, for sure.
Cool.
And with that, see us on our next episode of Wind Down. Cheers.